Thank you very much, Ms Ryan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship and also a huge pleasure to speak in this debate. And I do want to pay tribute to Katie Price, to the work that she has done. And it is fantastic to see her mother Amy here in the gallery. I know we're not normally supposed to refer to folk, but I think it's okay to break the rules sometimes. I also want to say how fantastic it is to see that we have a sign language interpreter. I think that British Sign Language is one of the most beautiful languages in the world. It literally brings language to life, and to see us having simultaneous interpretation here in Westminster Hall is fantastic, and I hope that it's something that the House authorities will consider doing for all of our debates, not just here, but in the main chamber as well. Hopefully that the Minister will respond to that in due course. And I really want to pay tribute to the Honourable Lady for Warrington North. She and I are becoming, as one of my colleagues calls us regulars in Westminster Hall, season ticket holders. But the reality is that whilst Brexit rages on, and unfortunately there is very little else in the public psyche and even in the main chamber, Westminster Hall, it really is the place where we are discussing the big issues of the day and where we are tackling the big issues of the day. And online harm and online bullying, and bullying of whether people are disabled, whether they are LGBT, whether it is our women, whether it is our trans community, is totally unacceptable. And I think the report that has been produced by her committee is absolutely outstanding, and I hope that the government takes very seriously the recommendations. She has gone through them in very specific detail, but I think the statement that stood out to me particularly was about the feelings that disabled people had about the lack of representation. Was, we're not hard to find, but we are easy to ignore. That should shame us all. That should shame us all, that is how so many disabled people feel. And I think a number of members have made reference to the intersectionality. The Honourable Lady for West Ham made particular reference to intersectionality and the work that Shahi, who had worked in her office, and Glitch, her company, are doing. And I think it is particularly stark. I meet regularly with members of the LGBT disabled community, and they have said specifically that women who are LGBT and disabled are some of the most marginalised people, not just online, but offline. And I think the fact that the committee consulted with tech firms, police, disabled people across a whole spectrum of stakeholders is to be commended. I think the fact that football teams and the football sector in general haven't responded or have responded so poorly gives me a sense of deep shame. As the SNP's Digital Culture, Media and Sport spokesperson, diversity in sport is something that I care passionately about. I am a passionate football fan and occasional player, but it is very clear to me that a lot of the online abuse comes from football fans, and that's obviously something that Katie and Harvey have felt so keenly and is so disgusting, and absolutely we need to get to the heart of that, and we need to name and shame those clubs, and we need to there are, to be fair, particularly in Scotland, and I know across other parts of the UK, there are many clubs doing a lot of really positive work in terms of tackling abuse and online harm, but we must do more, and we must hold those teams to account, because it is very clear that many football fans are hiding behind the guise of their online profiles and spreading vile abuse and driving many people offline. And they give the vast majority of football fans a bad name, because the reality is the vast majority of football fans are peaceful, decent folk who just want to support their team, whether it's in the stadiums or online. And I think it's disappointing to see some of the poor responses from government. I want to believe that the Minister and her government can do better. I may disagree with them on many areas and feel let down by them on many counts, but their online white paper on online harms was hugely ambitious, and I believe is a massive step in the right direction. And we in the SNP and in the Scottish Government very much support the intentions of that. We would like to see it go further, and I think the intentions and the suggestions in this report also are particularly significant. And I would like to just refer specifically to recommendation 8 about social media companies must demonstrate they've consulted and worked in partnership with disabled people themselves. And the Honourable Lady for Warrington North spoke specifically and very passionately about this. I mean, I would like to suggest, and I wonder if she and the Minister would consider this, that we talk specifically to those tech firms about quotas in the jobs that are done to monitor and regulate online. Because I saw a piece in the media fairly recently that moderators were having a particularly difficult time and themselves being harmed by the content that they were having to moderate. Now, I think we all know that within the police forces across the UK, people who are dealing with online paedophilia, pornography, all those kind of issues, only do those jobs for very specific periods of time. And I'm not clear how much transparency there is around moderators, about their profiles, about the range of backgrounds they have. But it stands to reason that if we have more people who are disabled, who are LGBT, who are from the BAME community, then they are going to be bringing their specific perspectives to the moderation of content and posts. And it's the same principle that the government has brought forward in getting companies to publish their gender data gaps, pay gap, gender pay gap, that has been, although there were flaws with that legislation, it's actually been quite effective from a societal perspective because it has made companies stop and think very carefully about what they need to do, what kind of people they employ, and the profile of those people. So I think, to my mind, that would be a sensible way forward and something that perhaps we can encourage the companies, particularly the tech companies, to get behind. And, the Honourable Gentleman, or Right Honourable Gentleman, I think, for Arundel and South Downs, I don't want to give him his proper title, paid tribute to his constituent, Katie and Harvey Price, and Katie's mother, Amy. Rightly, they have, Katie's put her head above the parapet. And this notion that people in public life, whether they are celebrities, whether they're politicians, whoever they are, should just suck it up, is a piece of nonsense. Yes, absolutely, as politicians, we deserve to be criticised and critiqued. Of course we do. We expect robust criticism, we expect robust debate, but we do not expect, and neither should any celebrity or a member of a celebrity's family, expect to be routinely abused and persecuted, frankly. And that is what this is. This has been of Katie and her son Harvey a persecution, and that absolutely cannot continue. So I commend her in the work that she is doing, and we in the SNP, and I know across the House, will do everything we can. But the Right Honourable Gentleman also referred to the fact that legislation and policing resource is inadequate. That is the reality. And we have to look at police budgets, we have to look at the resource that we allocate, the massive change that the digital world has brought to the challenges of cybercrime and online. And of course people want to see police on the streets. A close member of my family is a local bobby. And, we commend our police forces and our police officers. They do an incredibly difficult job. But we've got to remember where those threats are and make sure that they are properly resourced and supported to do those jobs. Similarly, as I referred to earlier in my intervention on the Honourable Lady, that the legislation that's currently in place is piecemeal. It's bitty, it's all over the place. We need to take a holistic look at the legislative framework to make sure that it properly tackles the issues of bullying of disabled people, of any group and anyone, both online and offline. So I hope that the Minister will take this report very seriously. It does strike me as a very concerning issue that we have committees of the House doing fantastic work, putting a huge amount of time and effort into reports, and quite often these reports are put on a shelf, left to gather dust, and the actions that have been suggested, that all that work has gone into, is not taken forward. I hope, for the sake of Katie and Harvey and every disabled person who's being abused online, and anybody who's being abused online, that this report will not just be put on a shelf to gather dust, that the Minister will take it very seriously and will enact the very sensible recommendations that are within it.
Thank you very much, Ms Ryan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon, and I too want to just add my congratulations to Katie Price and her family for bringing this petition forward. And I want to pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Warrington North, for what was an absolutely outstanding speech to introduce this debate this afternoon. And it was a brilliant speech because it was based on a very thorough analysis of the petition that was put forward. It's good to see the Petitions Committee working in exactly the way that it should. I don't want to say too much because our position about how we tackle this problem is quite well rehearsed. We've rehearsed it with the Minister a number of times over the last year and a half. But there are 3 or 4 things that I do just want to put on the record this afternoon. First, I think it is worth remembering that the scale of this abuse is now absolutely staggering.